There we go. Oh, Jane just joined us. Great. All right. Why don't everybody mute just here at the beginning? Go ahead and mute yourselves. And we're going to get this Faith in Blue weekend conversation up and running here. My name is Kyle Jokum. I'm the pastor at Silver Lake Community Church. And I also, in the past, have been the chair of the Northeast LAPD Clergy Council. And that all kind of got put on pause for COVID. But in a way, this is our first meeting, our first Clergy Council event since the quarantine started. So tonight we are joined by a variety of officers and sergeants and the captain from Northeast Division of the LAPD. And this weekend is called Faith in Blue Weekend. It's an initiative that started out of Atlanta. Pastor of a church there wanted to help create safer communities and better conversations between clergy and community and faith community members and law enforcement. And so it's spread all over. And now there's a variety of things happening in Los Angeles this weekend around Faith in Blue Weekend. And this is just one of them. I participated in a good conversation for Mission Division yesterday with some other clergy. And it was great. I live in Mission, that's why. And yeah, so now what we're going to do this evening is we're going to do some introductions of each other. We're going to get to know who's on the call and learn a little bit about each other. And then we're going to have some questions. So we have some questions that we already kind of came up with, some things that were kind of burning on our hearts and minds that we wanted to bring to the officers and LAPD personnel who've joined us this evening. And then at one point, we're also going to turn it over to those who are on this call for some Q&A and see if anyone has any, any questions for us that could be answered by the, officers who are on this call. Sorry, I'm just navigating to the page for us on YouTube. If you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to comment. We got 4 folks watching us on YouTube, so feel free to comment in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, so at any point, if you have any questions or thoughts you want to share with us, let me know, and I will see you pop up on the chat. Well, I'm going to kick us off with a quick prayer, and then we're going to do some introductions. And the reason I'm praying is because, again, the point of this is to bring faith communities and faith community leaders and law enforcement together to try to have some good conversations. So I'm going to pray. Creator God, thank you so much for this evening, the chance to have this conversation. We thank you for the technology to be able to have this conversation, something we maybe never would have thought was possible a year ago now seems normal, but we don't want to take it for granted. We're thankful for it. We're thankful for all the voices that we're going to get to hear tonight, and we pray that you'll give us open minds to other people's perspectives, open hearts even to be transformed by what we hear. And we pray for peace and justice to spread all across our division and our city. We pray this all in your name. Amen. Well, we've got a variety of folks joining us from a variety of groups. But since we don't have such a large group of people, I think it would be good to introduce each other. I think we have time for everyone who's on the call to introduce yourself if you'd like. Again, just so that we're not fighting each other's audio, if you could mute yourself when you're not speaking, that would help make sure that everyone can watch each other and hear each other well as we're talking and sharing. So let's start with the pastor. Let's start with the non-LAPD personnel who are here with us, pastors and members of congregations. And go ahead and give us your name, what congregation you're a part of, and tell us something else about you, so that we're not just a name and a job description, but so that we can get to know each other, where you're from, where you grew up, the best thing that you've been doing to keep yourself busy during this crazy quarantine time, or anything else you'd like to share. So I'll leave it. We'll see if it works for folks to just weigh in on their own, or if I have to kind of go through and call on people. So go ahead.
Hi guys, my name is Tara. I know you can't see me, but I don't generally like this kind of stuff. So I just want to observe and see how stuff is going on. Really appreciate all the men in blue. I want to support you during this horrible time. That's probably the main reason why I'm here, and Jesus rocks. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Tara.
I'm Brittany Jokum. I'm that cutie's wife. Hey. Hey. I was really excited about this conversation, and just I have some people that are like, burn it down. It all needs to go down. I'm like, no, it doesn't. So I'm really excited to hear what the officers have to say, and so respect everything that you do. But I'm excited for an interesting dialogue tonight. So I appreciate y'all being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anne Marie Johnson. I'm a lifelong resident of Silver Lake, a member of Silver Lake Community Church. I want to thank the pastor for putting this together. I've met with many of the officers we have joining us on a regular basis. Hey, Mark. It's nice to see people I haven't seen in a while. Art, Jesse, Gina. It's wonderful seeing everyone again. And I really and Leo, hey, I really looking forward to a productive and much needed, oh, Lenny, there you are again, productive and much needed conversation. And I hope we do this on a regular basis.
Thanks, Anne Marie.
I'll let Denise speak. Go ahead, hon.
We're Harvey and Denise Simpson from Highland Park Christian Church, used to be Pillar of Fire. I've been in Highland Park for a very long time, and I won't tell you how long because that will give my age away. And we appreciate all of you, and go Dodgers.
Yeah, and yeah, I should have another barbecue with lots of meat, and if people don't want to come up, that's fine. I'll eat it all. Okay.
Nancy, I saw you're on this call. Is she still here?
Yes, Nancy Moore, and I'm probably the one of the founding members of this clergy council, and it's been a real blessing. We've seen some changes and some non-changes, so this should be an interesting evening to hear where we are now.
Well, I think that's it for the non-law enforcement folks on the call. Jane. Oh, sorry about that, Jane. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
I was waiting for everybody else to go first. So Jane Demian, I'm from Eagle Rock. I'm a homelessness liaison for the Eagle Rock Neighborhood Council. We also do outreach to several churches in Eagle Rock. And I do know, I've spoken to SLO Ochoa many, many times about issues in Eagle Rock High. And I think I've met Captain Sandoval as well. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for everybody's help, and hope everybody's gonna be well, and hope we have a great conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Jane. So glad you could join us. Well, yeah, let's open it up for the LAPD. One of the, I know that a lot of the folks who are on this call know a lot of the faces who are here, but I have the expectation that we'll have some folks who will watch the replay of this live stream later and maybe don't know a lot of you. And I do know there are a couple folks on this call who don't know all of you. So why don't we go ahead and let us know your name, your rank, and something about you that makes you not just a badge for those of us who are watching, but something to help us know you more as people.
Good evening, everybody. I'll start it off, Pastor Kyle. Thank you once again for hosting this, and thank you all for joining us for an evening of conversation. My name's Art Sandoval. I'm the captain of Northeast area. I've been the captain of Northeast since 2015, going on 31 years with the Los Angeles Police Department this December. 31 years, man. Time flies. Born and raised in Los Angeles area, married to another captain, Captain Patricia Sandoval, prettiest captain on the department, prettiest officer on the department, if you ask me. And she's the captain over at Olympic area. And she had her Faith in Blue evening last night. So I stole some of her notes to make sure, as a good husband would do. Something about me. Let's see here. I think something I can say that not many people can say. I once appeared on the Tonight Show. Believe it or not. Yeah. I was Anne Marie, of course. Yeah. All right. Yes. There's always a topper in the group. I was a young officer working Hollywood division, and I saw that they were filming. It was Jay Leno when he was filming, and he wound up. We pulled up next to him, and we were driving in the black and white, and he ran some jokes off of us, and he wound up using that segment in the show. So that was pretty cool. But I'm very blessed to be a Los Angeles police officer and to be joined by Sergeant Rivas and the 6 additional senior leads. We have some of the best senior leads in the city, so we are blessed with that. So I'll pass it on to Sergeant Rivas.
Good evening. My name is Sergeant Cesar Rivas. I'm a supervisor here at Northeast for the senior lead officers. I've worked Northeast. This is my second tour working Northeast. I worked 7 years as a police officer at Northeast, and this is home to me, so I came back here as a supervisor. Things people probably don't know about me is, out of the badge, I'm an outdoor person. I love fishing, love taking my kids fishing, horseback riding, just like the outdoors, and always staying active and taking the kids out there, letting them know that things are more important than electronics. And that's just out of the badge, a family man.
I guess I can go next. My name is Senior Lead Officer Jesse Ispudo. I've been in this division over 17 years. I have 4 kids, 3 daughters. I graduated from UCLA. I actually was a teacher before I came onto the department. I taught for LAUSD, 6th grade English and social teacher quite some time ago. But one of the reasons I came really transitioning from being a teacher to this is just I wanted to help people, and I've always wanted to be a police officer ever since I was a kid. So.
Thank you. Who's next?
Go ahead, Gina. Ladies first.
Okay, thank you so very much. Hello, everybody. Anne Marie, always appreciate looking at your beautiful face. I've been a police officer for 27 years. Been at Northeast since 2001. I'm the eldest of 6. I came from Mexico, and during the 1984 Olympics, while some of my partners were probably patrolling, I was actually at Placita Alvera performing a lot of the Mexican folklore. And boy, I have a lot of pictures of that. And it's like, wow, I've changed. I'm the eldest of 6, like I mentioned. I love dancing and I love karaoke. So if anyone wants to karaoke, it's on. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I will go next. I am Senior Lead Officer Leo Ray. I've been a police officer for 25 years, slow for 11. I've been married for 25 years to my lovely wife. I have twin boys that are 12 years old, and I attend St. Paul Catholic Church here in Chino Hills.
I guess I'll go next. Good evening, everyone. I'm Officer Mark Allen. Been a senior lead officer for about 15 years. I have a total of 30 and a half years on the police department. I'm married. I have 2 kids, one 14, one 11. So that's what's been keeping me busy during COVID with all the online stuff. That's about it.
Well, I guess it's my turn. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lenny Davis. I've been with LAPD for over 32 years. I came to Northeast in 1990. It's really the only division that I've truly worked and enjoyed. I've been married for 27 years. Only feels like 10 minutes underwater, but good thing my wife's not here. But I have 2 kids, 22 and a 21-year-old. My son's at the Naval Academy finishing up. Actually saw him on TV on the game tonight, which is kind of fun. Really, that's it, other than I have a strange obsession with Christmas lights. And here you go. I just put it in the chat. If you want to check out a video of my my word obsession, knock yourselves out.
And I think I'm the last one, I guess. Any other senior leads have come on? Good evening, everybody. I'm Fernando Ochoa. I grew up in Highland Park. This December will be 33 years on the department. 17 years here in Northeast in 3 separate tours. I've been a senior lead for the last 5 years in charge of the Eagle Rock area. Married to my beautiful wife, Mercedes. We love to travel, and we belong to Calvary Chapel South Bay.
Well, thanks everyone. I did immediately go to that YouTube page, and maybe if after the meeting is over, I'll regale everyone and I'll play it on the chat for everybody here. There's 3 questions I want to sort of start off our evening with, and they sort of go from light to some of the questions that I think we're all wrestling with right now. But the first one I wanted to start with, and again, this would be for folks who are maybe unfamiliar with how the LAPD works, or folks who are just new to this whole conversation in general. But the question is, what is one aspect of the local LAPD station, or how the LAPD works, that you think people in the public misunderstand about how communication flows, or who responds to what? What is, and maybe a couple of you could respond on what you think, but what is something that we maybe get wrong as the public about how policing works, or how a local police station works?
Well, Interesting question, Pastor Kyle. Yes, it's definitely not the way you watch it on television, right? I think one of the biggest things is the amount of paperwork and the amount of oversight involved with these officers. These officers make an arrest now. We make an arrest, and it's just hours and hours and hours of paperwork at the moment. And currently, during the pandemic, right now, there's a zero bail or no bail for most crimes on the first offense. And the one set of officers can go to the jail, book the defendant. The defendant will be cited out, and the officers will still be at the station for several hours writing the report. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I'll pass it on to the Slows to see if they've got anything they want to add on to that.
Yeah, I think that the one of the biggest things also too is the response time for calls for service. What people have to realize that Northeast Division is a very large division. We're 32.5 square miles. And some people think when they call the police that we're going to respond right then and there. There's procedures in place for prioritizing calls. Because when I go to community meetings and I talk about response time, I kind of have to break it down to them. I think that if there's calling about a barking dog or, something like that, it's probably going to take us a while to get there. And I explain why, because if the officers are responding from the far south end of the division and someone has a gun in their face and they're being robbed, guess what? Those officers that were supposed to come to your house are now going to go to the robbery, because the last thing that we want to do is respond late to a high priority call and tell the people that just were robbed at gunpoint that sorry, but we responded to a barking dog first. So I think that's one of the big things. So this always has to do with response time.
Just add a little bit to that.
One thing I just wanted to add to that, what Mark said, is a lot of times people think that we hear in meetings that we never show up. They call and we never show up. And the thing of it is that we don't get to pick which calls we go to and which we don't. If a call's given to us, we don't have a choice. You will go to the call, but it just may not be in the response time that people think. If it's a wild party call and we get there 2-3 hours later because we've been handling priority calls and the music is gone, then we're not going to start banging on doors and trying to wake people up again. So we do show up at calls, it just may not be in the time that you're expecting. And sorry, Jess.
Oh, no, I just wanted to just add a little bit to that, because I've gotten a lot of complaints when it comes to people calling into the actual station instead of calling for dispatch. And one of the things is they think automatically we have computers that show us their address, their phone number, other information, and we actually don't have anything like that at the station. So it's always the best thing to do is when they call dispatch, they do have that ability to be able to, if they're calling from a home line, they do get that information. But when you call the front desk, for example, we don't have that kind of information. We just get maybe the caller ID and that's pretty much it. So just in case, it's always a better thing to contact dispatch number. The front desk itself.
If I can say, one of the things I've noticed, especially with my community, I have people calling in for, let's say, narcotic sales or somebody using drugs, and we respond, and then the officer takes the appropriate action, writes a citation, but doesn't take the person into jail, and then the people kind of think that we didn't do anything. It's unfortunate that the people don't realize that some of these crimes that are being committed now are no longer arrestable offenses, and they're just citations. I mean, even today I got a We Tip hotline memo on my desk where the people were complaining about the RVs, and he was complaining, isn't there a law for 72 hours? Isn't there a law against people sleeping in their cars? And it's like, they're not aware that some of these changes have occurred in the last 5 to 10 years where they are not citable offenses or arrestable offenses anymore. And then they feel like we're not doing our job when we come by and see what's happening. And we do what we legally can, maybe write a citation, identify the people, run them for warrants. If they don't have warrants, we can't take them away. But yet the people may think we're not doing anything, or or we never responded.
That's helpful stuff. I know, yeah, I've had a lot of things demystified for me since trying to be in more dialogue with LAPD and learning that, yeah, learning a lot of the things that you said. So that's helpful to know. Another thing that I think would be helpful to know specifically about Northeast Division, or what are some of the, what are the demographics of the officers that make up Northeast Division? My guess is there may be some misconception about the demographics of our local station. So I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about that.
Sure. And so the Los Angeles Police Department, we're about 10,000 strong of, well, just under 10,000 strong sworn, and about 2,500 civilian employees. There's 21 geographic areas throughout the city. I don't have the specific breakdown for actual Northeast, but I can tell you the breakdown of the Los Angeles Police Department. And currently, 49% of the department is Hispanic. 49% of the department is Hispanic. 30% is white, 10% Asian Pacific Islander, 9% Black. We're currently 81% male and 18% female. However, history was just made in this last recruit class that just started a couple of weeks ago. Many of you may have seen it on Twitter. For the first time in the history of the Los Angeles Police Department, the female recruits outnumbered the male recruits in the class. We had 27 females in the class compared to 21. So that's historic, because I know the department's been trying to do that for years and years and years. And as far as a breakdown in Northeast, we're pretty close to that. We may have more Hispanic and maybe less white and less Black. And we're probably at about an 18% male-female ratio as well. Something I can tell you that, as myself and many of the senior leads that we have some time on, when I came on in 1989, it was a predominantly male white department, by far. That's no longer the case. One of the commitments of the department is to mirror the community we serve. And I think in the last 31 years that I've been on, the department has improved. Are we there yet? No, but we're getting close, and we're trying to improve every day, as just by the last class of recruits that we just got.
Oh, everything you're saying is prompting other questions for me, but I want to try to get through everything we have to talk about first. One of the questions that I think would be helpful for us in understanding our local station and the context of the area in which we live and in which you serve, Northeast Division, which for those watching or listening who may not know, let's see if I'm right. We're talking about Silver Lake, Echo Park, Glassell Park, Cypress Park, Eagle Rock, Highland Park, Atwater Village. Any other main areas I'm missing? I think that's basically it.
We've got Los Feliz, Franklin Hills, East Hollywood, Mount Washington.
Mount Washington. Okay.
There's about 13 communities within Northeast area.
Okay. So that's the area that we're talking about for Northeast Division. So the question would be, what is the largest challenge that faces the officers of the department in Northeast Division when it comes to serving, protecting crime?
I think that, to be honest, Pastor Kyle, I think the largest challenge right now is just the anti-police sentiment that's out there. It's unfortunate that our folks are being targeted and are being challenged. I can tell you in the recent protests we had in Los Angeles, I myself, first generation American, both my parents born in Mexico, first language speaking Spanish. I'm out there in a skirmish line and I'm getting yelled at and getting things thrown out, getting fireworks thrown out, being called a racist by predominantly male and female whites in their 20 to 30s. And I'm just like, what's going on here? And I understand it wasn't against me personally, it's against me, the uniform. But, you know, you look around this room here, the senior leads, we talked about the breakdown of the department. We are the community. We represent the community. Many of us came from the Los Angeles area. So I think that is the biggest challenge just for myself as a commanding officer, going up to roll calls, talking to officers, telling them to continue to be professional, to continue to remain positive, to stay safe. Everybody's up to the task. Everybody wants to protect and serve. And they know that I guess what's frustrating is we all know that it's a minority that feels this way, but they're very vocal. And of course, they're the ones that are getting great time on the media. So I think that's the biggest challenge facing us currently, you know, within not just Northeast, but within law enforcement in general. Senior leads, anything to add?
No, I think that was very, very, very well said.
Yes, Harvey.
Harvey?
Yeah, you gave us a breakdown of the statistics, but I just have one question I'd like to ask you. What percentage of the LAPD are people created in God's image that are flawed human beings that are still trying to do their best, that need prayer?
I'm going to say 100%.
Thank you.
That's just our standard. That's just our standard.
Yeah. All righty.
Well, I'm sure we'll get back around to that question. Actually, the next question kind of delves a little deeper into that. All over the country and the city, as you mentioned, there have been demonstrations against the police, calls to defund the police with a variety of different definitions of what that means. Everything from, removing some amount of funding of police departments to abolishing law enforcement as an institution. And the protests are usually connected to what we see, what is seen as excessively violent, perhaps racially motivated actions by police, resulting in deaths, high-profile deaths of individuals like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and even some individuals here in Los Angeles. So there's a variety of ways that we could come at this question, which I guess for the sake of this conversation is the question. So I have sort of three different ways to ask it. So I'll ask the first one, and then maybe we'll try to tease out some more opinions or perspectives from you all. But also, as Harvey did, this is meant to be a dialogue, and these questions are meant to be a jumping off point, and I'm just here to moderate the discussion. So if at any point you'd like to speak, I'm watching the gallery view, so go ahead and put your hand up, or just unmute yourself. If it gets a little unruly, then I'll mute and unmute people, but let's try to have a dialogue. So the first part of the question to answer that subject would be, what's your take on these high-profile deaths that I mentioned and the actions that led to them? I think it'd be helpful to know how local law enforcement feels or thinks about those incidents.
Sure. Well, the Los Angeles Police Department is committed to the preservation of life. We have changed our training. We've changed our policy. We would like to do everything we can to ensure that if somebody is going to be taken into custody, that person is taken into custody as safely as possible. That goes for the officers, and it also goes for any other witnesses and or victims who may be in the area. What I say on these issues is you know, we don't live in a vacuum now. The world is wide open now, and everything's on video. Everything's on there's documentation. There's things going on. Whenever there is a high profile case, some of the ones you've mentioned, Pastor Kyle, there's going to be an investigation, and these investigations take time. They take time, and we need to make sure that we allow the investigation to come out. We have several checks and balances in this country. If the local municipality does not do a good job, the county gets involved. If the county doesn't do a good job, the state gets involved. If the state doesn't do a good job, the federal government gets involved. There are so many levels of oversight that we have to make sure that we allow the process to move forward. Now, I don't know the details on any of these other incidents you talked about, so I really can't comment. What I can comment, though, is let's say on George Floyd. George Floyd was terrible. We saw what happened, and it appears that these officers failed to act, which caused the death of George Floyd. Terrible. Terrible, terrible. It made me sick, you know, it's sick to my gut. Breonna Taylor, and any other one, I don't know. I don't know the circumstances of the investigation. The information was put out, the A, B, and C. There was the Attorney General of the state just released some information which kind of contradicts some of the information. So we just need to make sure that we slow down. We make sure we allow the process, because even if you're guilty, even if you kill somebody, and I'm not talking about law enforcement, who, you know, someone that's guilty here in this country, they still get their due process. So let's have this process go forward. And it's terrible that we as a country, we're being pitted against each other by race. You look at the statistics. Whites are lead. Okay, let me backtrack here. Let me say this. Police officers are human beings. We have feelings. We're scared. Sometimes we do things we shouldn't do. It could be a mistake of the heart, or it could be a mistake of the mind. If an officer injures somebody or kills somebody based on a mistake of the mind, and there was no probable cause or no immediate defense of life, that's a big issue. But when you have an officer that's in a fight for their life and is afraid, and perhaps resorts to a level of force that maybe isn't what he or she should have done at that time, we have to take that into account. And again, I'm not making excuses for anybody. I'm not. But we got to remember, our officers are human beings. They make mistakes, and they have feelings, and many of these feelings are fear. And that fear is real. There's been so many officers killed and seriously injured over the past several years. So what I say to the community when we talk about these events is, please, let's wait for the investigation to unfold. Let's see what happens. And then at that point, we can see what's going to happen. I can't speak as to what happens on these with these other departments, but within the Los Angeles Police Department, if you fire your pistol, that is ultimately going to be adjudicated by the police commission, Board of Police Commissioners, which is 5 civilians who are appointed by the mayor of the city. If there is a individual that's struck by gunfire, the district attorney's office is going to respond. The Office of the Inspector General here in Los Angeles gets involved. You've got all these entities looking at this investigation here within the city. So I just want to, again, George Floyd, we saw it. We saw the 8 minutes, however long that video was, or before he passed, and that made me sick, and it made everybody in this room sick. But we can't just jump on the bandwagon and say, here they go, here's another one. It doesn't work like that in this country, and you cannot think that way. And if you do, please, let's talk. And let's see what we can do to exchange information, to try and, we don't have to agree, but at least let's communicate and try and make things better.
Thanks, Captain.
And thank you, Captain. I come from a very unique perspective. For those who don't know, my father was LAPD, so I grew up as a cop's kid. I'm also African American, and that's obvious, and obviously female. So it's very difficult, and I'm not speaking on behalf of all African Americans in Los Angeles, but this conversation is very difficult when we demand that it be an honest conversation, even amongst African Americans. A lot of people don't realize, except for Mark and others, how difficult it is to be a police officer and be African American. It is an extremely challenging life to have. And my father lived it and his whole family lived it. I still live it because I still work with the police department. So you can imagine the agita and stress that I go through when I see a situation like George Floyd. But I also know the other side of it. I also know that the overwhelming majority of police officers have no negative confrontations with the public. It's embellished and magnified for entertainment purposes, both scripted and non-scripted. My father was on the force for 25 years and shot his gun once. I mean, it's not an episode of, Law and Order. It just doesn't work that way. So when these horrible situations take place, many people who have had absolutely no run-ins with the police, either good or bad, jump to the worst case scenario. And that's where we find ourselves. And and for years, I've spoken to many over at LAPD, to at least, 3 of the previous chief of police. We've got to do a better job. The LAPD has to do a better job with media relations and control the conversation and not have the media control the conversation. And I think that's one of the difficulties for the LAPD, because it is not a quote unquote savvy media relation department. And maybe that takes some outside professionals to come in and reshape that. But I think when it comes to media relations and communication with the community, the LAPD needs to do better, because the LAPD is being lumped in with all the other police departments across the country with a negative connotation. I've been here, I'm an LA native. I've seen the transition of the LAPD. And it is not the LAPD of 1992. It's not the LAPD when my father was an officer. It is a transitional and evolving department. And I just wish people would take that time and think about it. A, what it is to be a police officer, and B, what the LAPD is, what it once was, and what it is now.
Anne-Marie, real quick to clarify, you said you wish people would think about it. You mean the public?
Well, yes. I mean, it's very easy to say, screw them. They're all horrible people, and they're all racist, and they're all, regardless of their race or gender, they're all white supremacists, and they're all this, and they're all that, and they don't care about people, and they don't care about homeless people, and they don't care about Black people, and they don't care about women. They're just horrible people. Because that's such an easy conversation. That's like you're comfortably sitting in your house and you send a tweet out, or that's so easy. What's difficult is to have an honest conversation. That's why these types of conversations are so important to have. The easiest thing you can possibly do is protest. The most difficult thing you could possibly do is open up your ears and your mind and have honest conversations with people.
Well, let me jump in, Kyle.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah. What I heard from Captain Sandoval is the pain of the police officers, and we all know that the victim's family is in great pain. So here's the question: who's moving in to deal with those issues? To ask me to wait till all the processes have gone through before I can really grieve. I need to grieve right now. So I have a good friend who's a chaplain, and she's in the military, and on one of the teams that goes to all of these, what are national hurricanes and all that kind of thing. And the people that are ministering to the victims, she's a chaplain for them. They need a chaplain. So here's the hole that I think we're missing, is the caregiving very quickly for all the people that are hurting. To just let us hurt is just going to fester it. And maybe one of the reasons that people come out is to express that. So where are we with chaplains for police? Where are we with chaplains for the families? Is that something we can think about?
I think that would be a good question. I don't actually know what the LAPD chaplain system looks like.
No, Nancy, thank you. We do have chaplains within the department, and we do have we also have peer support for the officers. And again, these incidents, these recent incidents, none of them have occurred within the Los Angeles Police Department. These are national incidents, and which is drawing events to Los Angeles, which we are responding to. As far as the victims, yeah, I mean, you're right. When we do have a critical incident, when somebody is, we had the Trader Joe's incident a couple of years ago at Silver Lake there. Tragic incident. Pastor Kyle was right there he was on our clergy council, but he was there to support the victim's family, who was very upset at us, and rightfully so. I mean, it's unfortunate, and they were justified to be upset at us. Who wouldn't? Just because they're extenuating circumstances doesn't mean that they should not be upset at us. They lost a loved one, and a very, very tragic incident. So I think in the clergy council, I think that is a mission for us, clergy council, to continue to expand that program when we do have critical incidents like that, as first responders, that we can call on you to assist us with those. But as far as the chaplain program within the Los Angeles Police Department, I'm sure it could be better, but we have Pastor Ellis, or Chaplain Ellis at Northeast. He's always there, exigent the pandemic, but he's always visible. Whenever somebody is going through something stressful, he's always reaching out to me. Hey, do you have any officers for me to reach out to? Can I make any calls? Can I do this? So we do have that support element, but there's always room for improvement on that, without a doubt.
Go ahead.
You're saying me. Yeah, I have a general question. When I just look at like all the job roles that a police officer has, and it's a lot. Like you guys do a lot of different stuff. Yeah, and so like, responding to homelessness, responding to like, domestic abuse. It's just like, obviously the mental health system in our country is incredibly broken. And so you guys are unfortunately the ones having to care for homeless with mental health issues and all this stuff. So my question is, just seems like there's got to be a better model, a better model, especially with mental illness, and people, that need that type of help. And there seems like must be a better model when you guys already have way too much on your plate. So what would that model be? That's my question.
No, that's very, very, very true. They're talking about defunding the police, and you heard Chief Moore say, we would love to be able to walk away from any homelessness calls. We would love to be able to walk away from any mental health calls. We would love to walk away from any non-police. But unfortunately, the police department across the country is the only one that's going to answer the phone 24/7. And when somebody needs somebody at a certain time, who are you going to call? You're going to call 911. We've got folks with mental health who got the wrong order at the drive-through, and they're calling 911 for that. Just because that's what we do. Within the Los Angeles Police Department, we have the mental evaluation unit where we have clinicians. We already have clinicians teamed up with officers. So it's a clinician, an officer, and they respond to these calls for service. They're not the first responders, because usually it'll go to a uniformed unit. Leo and Lenny Davis there are working a car. They'll get a call. They'll respond. It's a mental health issue. Then they'll ask for a MEU unit, and a clinician, if available, will respond along with an officer, and then they'll process the incident. So these two officers can go back to what they need to do. The problem is that sometimes these individuals are violent, and it's more than the one officer and the clinician can handle. So that it's, instead of taking two officers, now you're taking four. You're taking four people. So it's a program that the department had been expanding. Now with this budget crisis, I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it's for law enforcement. I think it's a best practice around the country, because you have a clinician that's there on site. We would love it if there was a lot more clinicians. That way they could respond, they could handle. And if we did have a non-violent situation or non-critical situation, perhaps hand it off to two clinicians. So that way you cut off the law enforcement officer itself. We would love that. We would absolutely love that. The problem is not very few of those calls will be categorized as non-violent because of the all the potential involved there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there so are you saying, so LAPD, this is kind of the only model out there that you guys are doing this with the clinicians? This is something new?
I don't know. I'm sure it's being done by other agencies. I don't know for a fact, how I'm not a subject matter expert in this, but I know we've been doing it for several years now.
Yeah.
Little by little, they've been expanding the program.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great.
I know. Sorry? I know that a couple of years ago, there was a shooting involving the sheriff's department and someone who was mentally ill. And there was a lot of uproar about why were the police called and not DMH, the Department of Mental Health. I know that for us in our area, a lot of the times that we at our church call the police, it's because there's someone on our property who is dealing with some mixture of mental health and addiction issues. And there is a part of me that wonders, especially, I'm a layman, of course, in this area, but I feel like I can assess and see this person isn't a physical danger to me, but I'm programmed call 911 because my experience, if I call DMH, maybe they'll show up tomorrow night. But there is a part of me that wonders, why does someone with a gun need to show up to this incident? Any thoughts about that?
No, you're correct, Pastor. In a perfect world, it'd be good just to have the two clinicians show up, or a clinician in a security detail, or whatever whatever term we would need for that individual. But unfortunately, the social workers, and not just these kinds of incidents, we can go to Department of Children's Services. They'll call us if they're going to go into a home, and if there's a chance they're going to remove the child, they'll call us to go in there with them. They won't go in, and they won't go into the home on their own. So again, we would love to be able to say, hey, we don't handle those kind of calls. Call A, call B, call C. But unfortunately, or fortunately, we're there to support our brothers and sisters throughout the city, county on other issues. We would like to, and I think we're doing a better job of kind of taking a back seat. And we have a thing now called tactical redeployment. You call the police because you're afraid that your family member is going to injure themselves, and then the police get there and they wind up shooting and injuring. I mean, it seems like. So what we're doing now is like, okay, we get there. Okay, you're afraid this individual may hurt themselves. Okay, how legitimate is this threat? Okay, we go in there. Chances are it's going to escalate the situation. Why don't we just step back? Why don't you call us back when maybe they take their meds, or maybe they do this, and so the worst case scenario, the individual could seriously injure themselves, right? But if we step away, there's also a chance that's going to be de-escalated, and it's not going to be escalated. And that's what we're trying to do now. It's not a perfect science. We're going to be second guessed on all our things, decisions we make, but we just want to make sure we talk about them with the family. We think about it. We see what we're going to do, and we weigh out all the options. Because again, preservation of life. That's what we want to deal with.
Pastor, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure. And then I see that Jane has her hand up.
Well, Jane can go first since I've spoken already.
Jane?
Thanks, Anne Marie. Yeah, this is a really important topic. We do direct outreach to the unhoused in Eagle Rock, and there are people with mental illness who are homeless, and they're walking the streets, and residents are complaining to us, and then they tell us that they've called the police and the police aren't doing anything. And what I would like to see is a 24/7 mental health emergency unit, so that the police don't have to be the ones to be there to respond to a mental health situation, whether it's an emergency or whether it's somebody who's chronically mentally ill. So, and even drug users, for example, who become mentally ill as a result of the prolonged drug use. So I would love for the police not to have to do that work. I think the police should do police work, and the mentally ill folks really need to get mental health treatment. So I would like to find solutions and how to best utilize county resources, for example, to get the help we need in our communities to help folks, because it is a mental health, public health issue. And I'm really glad the police are there, because if there is an escalation, then you're there to help. And I appreciate that, believe me. But I think something else needs to be done. And I'm also curious about when someone who's mentally ill is arrested and taken into the jail, how does the mental health treatment, how is that referred? Because we really don't know what happens after they're taken in. And everybody keeps asking us, and I have no idea. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could explain that would be very helpful to me, and I'll relay the information to the folks in Eagle Rock. Thank you.
Jane, thank you. And again, I don't think there's an officer here that's going to disagree with you that we would love to have mental health professionals available to respond to these calls of service, because it's not a police issue. So when we deal with mental health issues, two things: if there's a crime that's been committed the individual is arrested on the crime. So we book them on the crime and they'll enter the system, and then if it's a misdemeanor or a low grade felony, right now they're going to be cited out. Senior leads, yes, am I correct in saying that? Yeah, so they're going to be cited out. They're not going to get any mental health. They're not going to get any mental health issues on that. If it's a high grade felony, then the defense attorney can get involved, and then they can start seeking mental health assistance, or the judge can get involved and do things like that. But if it's a non-crime issue, if it's just a 5150 issue where they're unable to care for themselves, or they're gravely disabled, where they're unable, then a clinician would get involved, and then that's when a 5150 hold is placed on them with them, and then they're sent to a facility for up to 72 hours.
Pastor, I had a follow-up
Go
with
ahead.
regard to the police responding to a potential mental illness situation. How well trained are 911 operators with regard to assessing the situation and trying to de-escalate before the call goes out to the LAPD? Because that is the only other, the person calls, not the person in need calls 911. The first person that person speaks to is the 911 operator. So how does that work? Is there maybe a disconnect in the training on how the 911 operator relays the information to the potential responding officer?
I'm not sure, Anne Marie, because I don't know what other resources are available. Because like Jane mentioned earlier, I mean, if somebody calls and says, "Hey, we have this individual with the mental health issue. We need somebody to come over here." If it's on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock at night, there's nobody else. They're going to call. They're going to create a call for dispatch. But even in our current system, if it's an emergency call for service, it's being generated, not a 911 call, but even a non-emergency. If it's a call that somebody's concerned about somebody, they're going to dispatch a unit so we can assess, and then we can get our MEU unit, our mental evaluation unit involved, and hopefully there'll be a clinician on clock at that time available to assist and respond. If it's somebody that's just concerned, hey, I think that this person over here is abusing their mother, we think that there's a chance they could refer that to adult protection services or something like that. But most of the time, if they call us, if they call dispatch, they're going to send a unit at least to assess.
Well, thanks. Great questions. And the subject of the intersection of mental health and policing is certainly, in a lot of ways, seems in the beginning phases. And a lot of us are hoping to see some of these solutions that we've touched on get developed. I wanted to bring it back to the discussion about race and bias against policing. As I mentioned, I was in a Faith in Blue weekend conversation yesterday with Mission Division, and an African-American pastor joined and shared that from his perspective, the Black community in Los Angeles as a whole, again, his words, not mine, is wary of or even afraid of the police, and that they're reticent to call the police. When they see police, it makes them anxious. Now, that may not be true across the board, but not only is that what he shared yesterday, but certainly that is, at least in some part of the media, that is the narrative that's being presented. I make no pretensions to speak for the Black community, but what I see happening is that narrative that police make us anxious, we're afraid of police, being the narrative from the one side, but then the law enforcement narrative is don't be afraid. And that discussion never really seems to go anywhere. It just seems to kind of circle and circle and circle and circle. So my question is, what do you think needs to happen? I'd love to hear from a variety of officers or even non-officers on the call. What needs to happen in order to improve the relationship between officers and maybe specifically the Black community or communities of people of color in general?
Well, Sergeant Rivas. Well, I just think, just like Anna Marie said, protesting is something easy, but having a communication, having dialogue with officers that work to be, that's a hard thing to do. It's just having an open mind, having a dialogue with officers, with the community, having meetings such as these meetings, it helps people out. As Pastor Kyle, you've seen it firsthand. You went on a ride along with me. You see how we deal with situations. You see how different, ethnicities, like Captain Sandoval said earlier, it's not that they do not like us, it's the uniform and the badge that we wear. But dealing with trying to get like what the pastor in the valley said, it's having meetings, having dialogues, just having monthly meetings and having officers with, having the community come to the station. Well, obviously now that the COVID's closed, but I think it's just having the meetings, having that open dialogue and having an open mind, as in, we're not going to agree in everything. We are not going to agree in 100%, but just knowing that we're going to agree to disagree, it's a big thing. And I'll let someone else just continue.
I think another great resource that we have is our Citizens Academy that we have. I know a lot of our CPAP members have joined, or people that have gone through actually joined our CPAP because they saw, basically they kind of got their feet into our boots and got to see what it's like and how we have to deal with certain situations sometimes, and the policies that we fall under and how we have to handle certain situations a certain way. I know it changed a lot of people's minds about, police work. I know some of the people, I was intimately involved in at least 4 or 5 Citizens Academy before becoming a senior lead as part of the community relations office. And I can tell you that there were some people up front that were kind of not necessarily on our side, but at the end of the 10 weeks, they understood a lot better the processes that we have to follow and the things that we go through, and sometimes the fear that we have to confront when doing this job. And it's definitely a great resource that we can get more people involved in the Citizens Academy. I think it'll open more eyes, but unfortunately we can only handle like 25 people at a time. And of course, we're talking about millions of people in the city of LA. But of course, it's definitely a start. And of course, these meetings are a start. I know as a senior lead, we have our basic neighborhood watch meetings where we actually communicate. And even today, we had a coffee with a cop and most of us were out there, a brand new Starbucks, just talking to the people coming through line and just being accessible that way, I think goes a long way in kind of offsetting some of the things people see or misperceive with all the stuff that's going on in the media.
I think it would be interesting to know statistically. I believe it's my life experience has indicated to me that African Americans are more inclined to call the LAPD than non-African Americans. So in particular areas. So, I mean, I would find it interesting to know what the statistics are. I know that Art, you and I had a conversation a while back about how in Silver Lake just doesn't have a relationship with the with Northeast Division. Well, Silver Lake is predominantly white and upper middle class. But in other areas of Northeast Division, I think the Latino community has no hesitation in calling 911 and asking for police assistance. And I think that would be true in other areas of Los Angeles. But I'm wondering, do any of the officers have any statistics with regard to the racial ethnicity makeup of those who utilize 911 for police assistance?
Yeah, I don't think any of us are going to have those stats right now, Anne Marie. But and Pastor Kyle, I'm sorry the pastor in the valley felt that way. And of course, are there going to be members in the minority communities that feel that way? Absolutely. But I've had several conversations. I've worked in the South End, and as Anne Marie says, I think the vast majority of minority community wants law enforcement there. Are there situations where groups have been pulled over? I mean, we've got, everybody's been watching the news. We've got a couple of metropolitan officers who've been filed on for falsifying information regarding gang association. So it does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. I'm not going to make excuses. Two things I can say are, we've got body worn video, and time after time, as a captain, I'm looking at these complaints that I was profiled, I was racially profiled, and I have yet, as a captain for 5 years, found a situation where the individual was profiled. It doesn't happen to the extent that it's portrayed to be. About 2 years ago, the department spent a little bit of money, and they had a survey sent out. Just how happy are you with the Los Angeles Police Department? And one of the lowest scoring communities, believe it or not, Anne Marie, Silver Lake. Yeah. In fact, I was pulled into the chief's office, and they're like, "Hey, what's up with Silver Lake?" And I go, "Well, they're great, but sometimes they think differently, and they don't think of us in high regards." And for years, I've been trying to work with Pastor Kyle and Anne Marie to try and get people to talk to us and communicate, because that's the only way we're going to improve or better the relationship.
I think the reason why this is so important, I just received the agenda for the next Silver Lake Neighborhood Council meeting. And they've created a subcommittee purely to discuss the defunding of the LAPD. So now, for those who don't understand, neighborhood councils are part of the LA City Charter, as are police officers and firefighters and the DWP. And I'm a former co-president of a neighborhood council. This is misuse of the neighborhood council process. The conversation shouldn't be, how do we defund the police? The conversation should be, how do we create a better relationship with the police? And so now the police department will probably feel very uncomfortable going to a meeting at the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council subcommittee if it's really going to be about defunding the police. So that's why, unfortunately, we have to have these type of conversations instead of having it facilitated by a neighborhood council. But that's the atmosphere we're in Silver Lake.
Anne Marie, do you happen to know what the definition of defund would be for the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council?
I think it would be pretty consistent with maybe the definition in Portland or other cities. It is to probably very consistent with the quote unquote people's budget, people's agenda, to defund it by 98%.
Maybe the police should stop showing up at Silver Lake and see how well that goes.
Pay no attention to that man. This is a good conversation. I just got a question in from someone who's been someone who's been watching on YouTube, and the question is about the public perception that as opposed to some other professions, it seems that there's a tolerance of quote unquote bad apples among different departments. I've heard in different conversations with different police departments, police condemning the bad apples in certain departments that do certain things, but then naturally the public is confused when the the report about certain bad apples comes out, and it seems they have a long pattern of bad behavior. And, you know, for teachers, for example, who would do that, or for business persons who would have a history, or pastors maybe who have a history of bad behavior, eventually you would think, or sooner rather than later, they would be moved on. But I think the perception among folks who are dissatisfied with police is that there's kind of like a good old boy tolerance of bad apples. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes. So in 1992, there was a pretty significant incident in the Los Angeles Police Department. And then we moved forward to the Rampart scandal. Like I said, this is not the LAPD when I came on. We had a federal consent decree directed upon us. And one of the mandates of this consent decree was to create a system to track problem officers within the Los Angeles Police Department. And again, I'm not a subject matter expert on law enforcement agencies across the country or across the world, but I can tell you that the Los Angeles Police Department by far has the most critical risk management system in the world. It's called our Teams 2 system. And basically, where anytime an officer is involved in something as mundane as a traffic accident, a complaint, obviously a shooting, use of force, a pursuit, all the high risk management issues, there's an email that's generated and it's sent to the commanding officer, to myself. And it says, hey, Officer Ochoa was involved in A, B, and C. It's given to the supervisor looks at it and an investigation's done. And then we're able to track, hey, you know what? I didn't notice Ochoa's got 3 complaints this last year. But something we got to remember here is just because somebody's got a trouble pass, being public figures, public servants, the Los Angeles Police Department will take a public complaint. We will generate all public complaints. It doesn't matter if there's any merit to it, if it's proven to be demonstrably false. It doesn't matter. If a member of the community wants to make a complaint against Art Sandoval, a complaint will be taken. So when you have these problem officers that, oh my God, this officer had 7 complaints. Okay, how many of those complaints were sustained complaints? There's a difference between somebody that has complaints and actual sustained complaints. Now, something we look at, is there a pattern of conduct? Okay, on these complaints, maybe each one by itself, we can't adjudicate it, we can't sustain it, we can't hold the officer accountable. But now what we're doing is we're looking at pattern of conduct and saying, hey, you know what? Ochoa, and sorry to pick on you, Fernando, but you're on the screen here. Ochoa said this on this complaint. He said this on that complaint. He said that on complaint. The likelihood that he said this or has been doing this is probable. So all there has to be is a preponderance of evidence, which is 51%, more likely than not. If that's the case, a complaint is sustained within the Los Angeles Police Department. As a captain, unfortunately, I have to adjudicate complaints. I look at these complaints, and I've sent 4 officers to boards of rights, which are little tribunals, little trials, and 4 officers have been terminated for complaints that they received and they sent. So Los Angeles police officers, we are tracking our officers. We are holding them accountable. And if they do something that would have disqualified them from being hired in the first place, we send them in there for termination. And I think we have a pretty good system. And again, this goes to uses of force. If you have an incident of an officer that's always getting involved in use of force and he's always using this one technique, he's a MMA fighter or something, that'll come up. It'll be identified. So our Teams 2 system is pretty amazing as a risk management tool to help track us. Now, I think there's a call for this program to go nationwide, and I think it should, because I think all law enforcement agencies should hold their officers accountable under the same standards that we do.
That's helpful. I was just chatting with the person who asked the question, and they said it's great to know that there's a system in place. Follow up, though, I think is one that the question that this person had, I think is relevant to, again, the narrative that we've been hearing in the media, which is that there can be a culture of aggressive behavior within police departments, and maybe, let's say for the sake of argument, not in the LAPD, but in other law enforcement departments around the country. Do you think there's something about the nature of the job that is attractive to folks who are aggressive or prone to overly aggressive behavior? And if so, or if not, what can be done to change cultures in other departments, for the sake of argument, that might foster this sort of behavior?
Well, we do get stereotyped in law enforcement, correct? Like I mentioned earlier, in 1989, when I got hired, it was a completely different department. Anne Marie's father, I think you had to be over 6 feet tall at one point. And they were these, there was a height requirement at some point. Yeah.
Really?
So things have changed now. We are much different. We ourselves are hiring, trying to mirror the our community that we serve. So I think that in itself. As to other agencies, I think it's a dialogue that we continue to have, and communities. We talked about this in Anne Marie's group, when we meet with the residents from Silver Lake. I'm very proud of what Los Angeles Police Department has done, but I am not blind, and I do know that there's some agencies across the country. Many of these are small little small little agencies. We need to standardize that, not just in the county, not just in the state, federally. We need to standardize what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. And changing people is difficult. But there's a voice and there's a momentum right now. So I think we stand that, we do it responsibly, and we all say this is what's acceptable and this is what we want. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's.
Well, the nice thing about what we're doing right now is we don't have to fully answer all questions or get 100% all of these issues sorted out, because for the most part they can't be, at least not in venues like this. We're towards the end of our time, so I wanted to give a chance in the time we have left for maybe anyone who's had a burning thought or opinion about something that we've talked about, whether an officer or a member of a faith community, who would just like to share anything. This is a chance to say what needs to be said.
Well, I just want to jump in real quick, kind of talking about what you're talking about, Pastor Kyle, as far as the type of officers that we're hiring. Being on the job for over 30 years, I too have seen a big change in the way the department has gone. And even simple things like now requiring a college education to promote is looking for someone that's just not big and burly type person. Our emphasis now is becoming more diverse, bringing more ideas to the table. Personally, I mean, I love working with Gina. I don't like working with the rest of the guys. And the reason being is because Gina has the gift of gab. She can talk any guy into jail anywhere, and I can just stand there and look like eye candy while she does all the work. But traditionally, female officers are golden. when it comes to being able to communicate and relate to suspects. So we're not looking for the big burly guy who's ready to go, kick some butt, but we're looking for people who are smart and know how to communicate and how to relate to people. And quit smiling there, Fernie. I see you.
I was just saying, sorry, Mark.
Hey, just for the record, I'm burly and smart.
It's been entered into the official internet record now. Well, hey, thanks. This has been so great to get to chat, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do this again, that we don't need a national initiative to have the excuse to have a conversation like this. It's long overdue. And, to be honest, there's some folks who are missing from this conversation, some groups, some opinions, and I'm hoping that as we do this, we'll be able to get a more diverse group of folks to be able to weigh in on this. But I'm really so thankful that so many of you from Northeast took some time this evening to be able to join us, as well as all of you from the community, from the Clergy Council who chimed in, and all of you who are watching on YouTube and weighed in with some questions. I really appreciate it. We actually had someone all the way from Pittsburgh watching us. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to close this out with a prayer, and then we're going to actually keep the Zoom meeting open, but we're going to stop the YouTube live stream and the recording after that. So please join me. Creator, you are so good, and you are the God of peace and the God of justice. And even though those two, as we see in slogans spray painted and waved around our city, those two do not always coincide, that indeed they must, because they both flow from you. So pray that as we continue to talk, that both peace and justice will reign, at least in Northeast Division. We thank you for this evening and for these officers, and we do lift them up to you and pray that you will keep them safe from the virus and all the other things that they encounter out there on the streets, and hold us all in your grasp until we get to chat again. We pray this in your name, Lord. Amen. All right, thanks everyone for joining us on YouTube. Stay tuned to Silver Lake Community Church's YouTube channel for more of these types of events in the future.